I tried to play this game because I was disappointed with Path of Exile 2. I already explained on my video. The major issue I had with Path of Exile 2 is that it's basically a fucking real money trading scheme. And since everything revolves around pushing the player to the real money trading scheme, well, all of the fucking gameplay, especially the loot, is fucking trash. And everything revolves around currency. So I decided to try Titan Quest because it's a single player action RPG. So I tried to play it, I played it for quite a bit, and I honestly think this is the worst action RPG I have ever played. For starters, the gameplay is just way too slow, but the issue is that it's only slow for the player, because the actual enemies move really fucking fast. In fact, sometimes they move so fucking fast that they are probably going to one-shot you before you can even escape. I don't like that all the skills in Titan Quest have cooldowns. Most of the skills have cooldowns. It's like 95% of the skills, and that is way too fucking stupid in my opinion. Now, it probably gets better when you have many of these skills. If you have like 5 of these skills, it probably doesn't feel as slow, but at the start it feels quite slow. And I was basically only using the Ice Shard skill for like 3 whole acts, because I don't like skills with fucking high cooldowns, because some skills have really high cooldowns. I don't like that, so I mostly used the Ice Shard because I was trying to build a mage. So imagine playing Ice Shard basically only right clicking for 18 straight hours or 3 whole fucking acts. I think everyone will say that that sounds really boring, no? Now, as time passed, I did introduce a few of the cooldown skills, and they weren't as fucking trash when they were maxed out. But before you get to that point, they feel really underwhelming, especially with that big cooldown. Now, the loot. The loot is absolutely abysmal. It's really bad. Not only the affixes are just boring as fuck, but the stats that you need don't come easy with this gear. They don't really drop with the stats that you need. This loot, like I said, is abysmal, not only in quality, but in quantity. Many times you're going to delete a boss, you're going to kill a rare, one of those mobs with a star on top of them, and they are not going to drop anything, at least not anything of value. And if you have filters on, well, you are not going to see anything. Another big issue Titan Quest has is that it has 8 motherfucking types of resistances and 8 subtypes of resistances. This is way too much fucking resistances. Way too fucking much. This wouldn't be an issue if the gear actually dropped with these resistances, which for the most part they only drop consistently with electric, fire and ice resistance. Those 3 resistances come actually quite often, but the problems start arising when you want any of the other types of resistances that are not any of those 3. For example, if you need vitality resistance, I never saw any piece with vitality resistance. If you want physical resistance, same thing. If you want piercing resistance, it can come sometimes, but it's very low. So you are going to struggle really hard trying to max your resistances in this stupid game. And that is a really huge issue. Why? Because enemies are literally going to start to one-shot you, especially at the beginning of Act 3. More or less in Act 3, maybe at the end of Act 2, I don't remember well. Act 3, between Act 3 and Act 4, there is a huge spike in difficulty, and it's not good difficulty. It's cheap artificial difficulty because it's all full-blown retarded high as fuck damage. It's just way too much fucking damage. And you need these resistances, otherwise you're going to be consistently one-shot. And this is when I basically dropped the game, because I was trying to form these resistances because I said, okay, I am going to engage with the game. I am going to meet the developer halfway, and I did. But the problem is that the fucking developer never met me halfway. The motherfucker or the motherfuckers wanted to drag me all the way to their fucking side, and I said, no bitch, no. And that wouldn't be an issue if the game was actually good. But the problem is that this game, in my opinion, is not good, because the gear only comes with one type of resistance per piece of gear. So each piece of gear will only have one type of resistance, at the very least at that part in the game. So if you're trying to max out all your 8 stupid resistances, you're never going to be able to do that, because the gear will never support that demand. Now some people will think, why don't you gather many types of gear pieces with different types of resistances and constantly swap them out? Well, the reason why I don't do that is because it's unreliable. This is not a game where Act 3 is only ice mobs or Act 4 is only fire mobs. This is not that type of game. The type of enemies that you're going to face have multiple different elements of attacks. So it's going to be completely unreliable for me to be trying to constantly swap my gear for different resistances. This won't work. It's cumbersome, it's fucking annoying, and it's unreasonable. The worst of these resistances, in my opinion, is physical resistance, because most of the time when I was being one-shot was by physical attacks. And since I made basically a mage, you can already guess that my guy didn't have a ton of fucking armor. So guess who was killing me? It was physical attacks, physical mobs. Those were the ones that were killing me. Elemental attacks, more or less, my guy could take them. But physical attacks, or poison, or all of the other elements that I was unable to cap, all of those basically one-shot me. Another issue that I have with this game is that it's not really clear what you're supposed to build as a defensive layer, because if you compare this with Path of Exile 1 or 2, in Path of Exile games you have very clear paths on how to build your defenses. You can choose evasion, you can choose energy shield, you can choose armor, you can choose to build health, but in this game it's not really clear what you should be doing, because you can say, oh, in this game you actually have to put points into your stats, and one of those stats is health and the other one is dexterity. Health, it's very obvious what it does, it increases your fucking health. But dexterity also increases some stat that is named defensive ability, but it's not really clear if you should be trying to build this defensive ability or not. It's not clear. The defensive layers in Titan Quest are not really clear, and in fact, I searched online if I should be spending my points into health, for example, and the answer was no. You should not be spending your points into health. So what the fuck I am supposed to be doing? Essentially, these people say that the only way you should build your resistances is through gear. But then we have an issue, because like I explained before, the gear, the affixes of this gear are really fucking crappy. So if you're supposed to go and build your resistances, for example getting more health through the gear, but on top of that you also need resistances, chances are you're not going to have the gear to do that, because the gear is never going to drop with those stats, with those affixes. It's never going to drop. It's either health or a resistance. It's never both, at the very least in that part of the game. Obviously, I want to think, right, that as you progress through the game, the gear is going to become better, but I do believe this part of the game is really unfair, because the gear that drops is really shitty. It's just fucking garbage, and then you have these enemies one-shotting you. It feels fucking cheap. There is also this relic crafting, and I think this mechanic is fucking trash. The relics are fucking garbage. Why? Because it's very difficult to craft them. You need these monster pieces that drop from enemies, which I think is quite cool, but the problem is that you also need the recipe. But here's the catch: every time you craft one of these relics, the recipe disappears, and these recipes are really hard to come by. I just don't see why the fuck the recipe is used. It's unrealistic, it's retarded. It not only is unrealistic, but also in terms of gameplay, it just ruins the experience. It's just fucking trash. It makes no fucking sense. There is also another problem with this game, is that you can't respect your stats in the game. You can only respect your skills, and they cost a shit ton of money to do so. In fact, respeccing in this game is so fucking bad that the players basically built an external tool which is called Titan Quest Respec to be able to do so. So this game really makes no fucking sense to me. Now, there are things that I liked about this game. Obviously the setting, the theme of the game, I think it's quite cool. The graphics, I think they are good. I think the graphics are decent. I actually like that the game has a day and night cycle. The game feels quite alive. I like that. I honestly never paid attention to the fucking story. I never pay attention to action RPG stories, so I can't tell you if the story is good or not. I think some of the abilities do look good and feel quite good to use, but the problem is, like I said previously, the cooldowns. I think the ability to have two classes is pretty good and opens up a decent amount of customization and building. I unfortunately was unable to see how the gear is going to be at the end game because I fucking dropped the game, but the game maybe has some potential at the end game if you can endure the fucking trash that I just described to you. But unfortunately, I don't think the game is going to be much better. I don't think so. I think the game has fundamental flaws in its fucking design. And unironically, this game made me appreciate Path of Exile 1 and 2 even more. Even though Path of Exile games are essentially, like I said in my videos, real money trading schemes. Everybody knows it. But as a game, as a video game, Path of Exile games are superior, way superior to this garbage. Now, Titan Quest, the fanatics of this game, are going to say that, oh, it's because you don't like slower gameplay and all of that bullshit. I am going to repeat to you that this quote-unquote slow gameplay only applies to the player because the enemies don't follow that same logic. The enemies actually attack fast as fuck, plenty of times. They literally rush you and one-shot you. That's what happens many times. And I think this is the wrong way to make a slower gameplay in action RPGs. I think if you want slower gameplay, even Path of Exile does it better. Path of Exile 2 even does it better because at the very least you have a dodge roll button that allows you to get away from really fast enemies. And even though Path of Exile 2 is faster paced than this game, I feel like it makes more sense. The combat makes more sense. But even Path of Exile 2 is nothing compared to fucking games like Elden Ring or Neo. I don't think this game need to become Souls-like games. Fuck no, I hate that shit. I hate fucking Souls-like slop garbage. What I am saying is that if action RPG developers want slower gameplay, what they need to do is to design their enemies much better, and that they need to look for games like Neo, like Dark Souls, like From Software games. They need to look to those games and see how they design their enemies and how the whole combat is slower because the combat is more involved. The combat is not only spamming abilities. Now, do you remember any cooldowns in Elden Ring? I don't think so. I don't remember any cooldowns in Elden Ring. So this idea that you need to have cooldowns in abilities like a fucking MMO in action RPGs is retarded beyond belief. You don't need that. What you need to do is, if you want slower combat, you need to make the whole fucking combat slower, and that means designing the AI of your enemies in a much better way, in a way that they are interesting to fight, and the fights become more involved, because no action RPG to this day has that fucking combat. In fact, Souls-like games are already somewhat action RPGs. They are a variant of action RPGs. So if these traditional action RPG developers want slower combat, they need to take notes about what the Souls-like genre is doing. Not, I am going to repeat this, you don't need to become a Souls-like. All you need to do is design your enemies better, design your whole combat better. Putting cooldowns, designing these garbage, stupid, artificial ways to slow the player down feels like shit, and it's only a band-aid. It doesn't fix the issue. The issue is that your enemies are bad design and are designed to circle the player, to surround him, and the only way for the player to deal with that shit is to basically throw a fucking nuclear bomb at his feet to destroy them. And if that is a problem to you, if you think that's bad, clearing entire screens of enemies with one button, then you need to redesign your whole combat. Your whole enemy pool needs to be designed with better AI. So essentially, that's what I think about Titan Quest. I think this game is way overrated. Way overrated. This left a really sour taste on my mouth, and I don't think I am going to even try Titan Quest 2, because I have read that the developers are making the same mistakes, the same fucking thing. These idiots didn't learn anything, basically. They want to slow the combat down artificially with band-aids instead of doing what I already explained to you. So in my opinion, the original Titan Quest is an overrated, pretty mediocre, below average game. And I think Titan Quest 2 is going to be more of the same thing. If I had to rate this shit, I will give it a fucking 4. A 4 out of 10. Because it's below average. That's the truth. Anyone that likes this shit, more power to you. But I do think this is almost garbage.